Hello and welcome back. This video is going to cover the topic of neoplasia, which is going to introduce us to the topic of cancer in our unit on cancer. Neoplasia translates to new growth. That new growth could also be interpreted as being a tumor, where we have a collection of cells that are growing unregulated. Okay? So you end up with a mass of cells, and that's what we call a tumor. Okay? Our defect is going to be in the process of mitosis. All right? So cells are undergoing mitosis when they shouldn't. All right? So you've got unregulated cell division. The important thing here to remember is that tumors can be classified in one of two ways. They can be classified as benign, all right? Benign tumors typically not fatal, all right? But this is biology, and we always have exceptions with biology. Location can play a role on this, all right? In particular, you can have a benign tumor growing in the brain, but because the brain is encased by the skull, which is bone and is hard and doesn't expand, that can interfere with normal body processes, okay? So typically, benign tumors are not fatal. They can be if they're in the wrong location, okay? But some of the key characteristics of a benign tumor is that, relatively speaking, they have a slow growth rate, all right? So you've got unregulated cell growth, but they're dividing at a low rate. Of cell division, okay? Typically, they lack the ability to move, okay? So the process that we talk about with cancer, cells can move to other places in the body. That process is known as metastasis. So benign tumors don't have that ability to metastasize or move to other locations in the body. They also tend to be poorly vascularized. All right, vascularized, that refers to blood vessel growth. So benign tumors don't typically have a large blood supply to them. Because they don't have a large blood supply going to them, that's in part what can limit some of their cell growth, okay? Because in order for cells to grow rapidly, you need to have lots of nutrients. The blood supply or the vascular system is what brings in those nutrients, okay? So they tend to be poorly vascularized. They lack the ability to metastasize. They've got a relatively slow growth rate, all right, with benign tumors, okay? Our key with our benign tumor, and I've kind of run out of room here, all right? If they're completely removed, that tumor won't grow back, okay? So it tends to be what's known as encapsulated, meaning if we've got our tumor cells here, sorry for the squeakiness, all right? They're restricted or kind of walled off and have tissue that's surrounding it that keeps it encased, okay? If that is removed, that tumor will not return, okay? So benign tumors, typically not fatal. The other classification that we've got are malignant tumors, okay? Malignant tumors correspond to cancer and a cancer diagnosis, all right? There are some characteristics associated with malignant tumors that are going to be different from our benign tumors. We've got rapid cell division that occurs, all right? So this is undergoing a rapid state of mitosis, all right? In contrast to benign tumors, these cells can undergo metastasis, meaning it can move to other locations, or we're talking about invading local tissue. So where the benign tumor was encapsulated, if we've got a malignant tumor, all right, I'm going to kind of draw this in. This is our boundary here. Malignant tumors have the ability to kind of break through, okay? And they can enter our blood vessel, okay? And then once in the bloodstream, those cancer cells can sit down in other tissues, all right? Most typically, the tissues associated with cancer metastasis are usually brain or bone, but there can be lung, I should put it in there. Brain, bone, or lung are the most common locations for metastasis, but once in the bloodstream, that cancer cell can move anywhere within the body, okay? So it has the ability to metastasize, and it also dedifferentiates, okay? This is a big word, dedifferentiate. Okay, what it means is essentially it reverts to a less developed state. Whereas a benign tumor, if you've got a benign tumor associated, say, with the breast, that benign tumor is going to still look like breast tissue. All right, a malignant tumor might not look like the normal breast tissue, okay? So you can determine by looking through a microscope at the characteristics associated with a cancer cell, okay? And some of those characteristics that you're looking for are a hyperpigmented nucleus, all right? Pathologists might refer to that as the nucleus looks kind of mean, all right? essentially what you've got going on are two things with your nucleus. It picks up stain very readily, so it looks darker, all right? The other thing you have associated with malignant cells is a reduction in cytoplasm, all right? So there's less cytoplasm around the nucleus, okay? All right, so we've got rapid cell division, we've got metastasis, we've got dedifferentiation. The last bit that we are going to associate with malignant cancer is that they are highly vascularized. Okay? What that tumor cell does is it releases factors to get blood vessels to grow towards the tumor. Okay? And we'll talk a little bit more in detail about one of these, some of these, all right? VEGF is one of those factors, all right? That's involved in getting blood vessels to grow, all right? Typically with malignant tumors, we also have mutations in certain genes, all right? And those genes that we have mutations in are referred to as oncogenes. All right, oncogenes stimulate mitosis or cell growth. All right. And we have tumor suppressors. All right. Those tumor suppressors are kind of like the brakes on cell division. So with the process of mitosis, that cell has the ability to stop and check and make sure that all the DNA is replicated, right? That's part of the normal cell cycle. If all of the chromosomes haven't been replicated, a tumor suppressor can be activated and said, hey, you need to go back, double check your work, make sure you got everything, right? So the tumor suppressor is kind of like the brakes. The genes that we'll talk about that are tumor suppressor genes are called P53 and PRB. All right, the P just stands for protein. These were, P53 in particular was a protein that was found at 53 kilodaltons. That's why it's named P53. Some examples of oncogenes. The epidermal growth factor receptor. Is going to be one type that we'll talk about. But it's not just growth factors that can be oncogenes. You can also have transcription factors that turn genes on when they're not supposed to be on. And you can have other parts of the cell regulation that are disrupted that fall into oncogenes. We'll go into more detail on that in a later video, okay? But with malignant tumors, typically you've got a mutation in an oncogene or a tumor suppressor, and you might have mutations in both, okay? So sometimes cancers will have multiple mutations associated with them, right? So that's kind of our brief introduction to tumors and cancers. If you have any questions, please let